ran to Grandma's room, took out the candles and lit one, replacing the one that had already gone out and left the rest of the candles in the corner, while I heard a laughter coming from Grandpa's room. When suddenly fell, my uncle ran past me, pushing me out of the way and opening the door to Grandpa's room with a bang. He checked everywhere but found nothing inside the room. We spent the next few hours until dawn telling him everything that had happened since Grandma's death. We had to go to sleep, my uncle said, and in the afternoon we'll think about what to do. I spent half the afternoon since 11 in the morning when I woke up delivering orders from one point to another in the city. At times I forgot everything, and at times my life was like anyone else's. Like all the people around me, and that I wished at about 5 in the afternoon, I moved towards the neighborhood, continuing to think about what awaited me at my grandpa's house. When I arrived at the gate, I ran into Doña Mercedes, a lady who helped my grandparents with the housework during their last years. She gave me her blessing and left in a hurry. When Brian and my uncle came in, they had gallons of holy water on the dining room table, strange artifacts, crucifixes, and Bibles. They scared Doña Mercedes, and I told them, no, she brought all this, and said Brian, I thought it didn't look good. I asked them what she had told them, and Brian said, I just thought it didn't look good. And I asked them what she had told them, and Uncle Rodolfo said not to worry. They were incoherencies and fantasies of the lady. Seriously, I asked her, after everything that had happened to us here, let's say the lady has fantasies. She says they're goblins. Brian said she didn't see them running from the patio to the candle room, and she doesn't know what's up with the room either. When she came to the grandparents, they already had it like that. I went to the living room to leave my things that the goblins sounded absurd, but in the house, in that place, in those circumstances, they thought of something out of the normal was enough to terrify me, and that blessed angel smiled towards me in his normal position, but with something different on his face. Angel came on to let's do an experiment and look at this. I didn't like how Brian's words sounded. They opened the door to the candle room, and my uncle, who took one of the small candles, blew it out. The lights flickered for a moment as if there was an overload of electricity, and the flames of the candles trembled, as if someone was breathing near them. I felt a coldness in my back, as if it was coming from a wind from a long corridor, in spite of the lights being on. Because of the way it was built, the house always kept its corners particularly dark. Nothing happened. Before my Uncle Rodolfo could finish that sentence, in an attack of my nerves, my uncle lit the candle and left it on the table. It didn't take 2 seconds for the footsteps to stop, and they wanted us to keep them lit. Let's leave them like this, said my uncle. Whatever they are, they get angry when we put out the candles. Tomorrow, I'm going to look for the priest. He locked the room with the candles and took his things. Stay in the house if you want, but don't get in here. See you tomorrow. After saying that, he just arrived and he left. Brian, however, seemed to not pay attention to him. He seemed concentrated. I don't think they get angry because of the candles. At first, I didn't understand why he whispered what I asked him, and I don't think they get angry because of the candles. I think they prefer them off, don't you think? I don't think you understand the truth. There were 2 more candles about to be finished, at least the ones I could see from the candle room. I didn't understand the truth, I told him. There were 2 more candles about to be finished, at least the ones I could see from here. Let's see if they go out. Saying that, he went back to the kitchen and started pouring holy water all over the house. I really didn't know how safe it was to stay there, but what I did know was that I didn't have to leave him alone. So I called Edouard. Well, the only truth is that I didn't want to be alone. Edouard reluctantly agreed to come because he was very scared. He arrived at about 10 o'clock, he said, because he had a lot of things to do in the house. Because he had many things to do in the store, and well, I knew it was not a pretext because he was helping his father in a small hardware store they had. We had been having bread and milk for dinner when Edouard arrived. He arrived later than he had promised and tried to convince us to leave, to let Uncle Rodolfo deal with it. If he wanted to keep the house, it's not about what is left, but about what it is, said Brian. This was the grandparents' house, and we all have memories here. We all grew up here. It belongs to everyone. Whatever comes out of that room, we arrived before, or maybe Edouard didn't finish. Maybe that was from before. We were silent for a while and tried to finish dinner. A while later, a deep sigh seemed to come from the room of the candles. There was some about to be finished, and Brian said to Edouard, "We want to see what happens if we leave it like this." A murmur then started to go through the house. Brian and Edouard walked towards the hallway, and I got up to leave my plate in the sink. When I got to the sink, the murmur got louder. It seemed to come out of the pipes. I don't know if it was another language, but I couldn't understand it. But I couldn't stop looking at the pipe. I took off the screen that protects it, and the murmur dropped for a moment, as if it had been surprised. Then, a moment later, it continued as if nothing. I could almost see an eye peeking out from inside there. That's my imagination, I thought. Nervous, I walked down the hall to look for my cousins. Then I realized that someone had turned off all the lights. Only in the kitchen where I was, there was light. Another sigh came from the room, the other candle, I thought, and ran down the hall. When I turned around to head towards the living room dining room area, I saw what seemed to be a woman running towards me. A woman dressed as a bride. Maybe it was my imagination because it was very dark, or it could have been anything. I only remember that instead of going straight, it turned right into the hallway that was towards the street, and it went out to it. I'd like to have everything to change at that moment. That's when I went out to the street, everything would be over and life would go as normal. But the truth was that the atmosphere became very heavy and with a very strong smell of sulfur. It seemed to flood everything outside and fill the whole street. The only thing that occurred to me was to go and knock on the door of the neighbor Madeleine. I liked her very much. I trusted her. Madeleine had tried her luck in the United States since she was old enough to work. She had saved enough money to buy a property in that town when she returned to the country and restored it little by little. She was not even 35 and she was already fulfilling her dream. I repeat, I liked her very much in that the moment she was only ready to find a way to escape from the house when she opened the door, I realized that I had not thought of any excuse. I asked her for her number because I had lost mine, I told her, and I needed to make a call. She told me to go to her house. Even she was looking for her cell phone. I noticed her discomfort because of the time, but there was time later to apologize. She asked me how I lost my cell phone, and I told her that the power had gone out at my grandparents' house. "Well, look, I am back," she said. She pointed to me at the window of the room and overlooked the street. A room that was closed most of the time that Grandma used to knit one of her favorite hobbies, her silhouette. The silhouette of the grandmother was drawn perfectly at that moment, using the sewing machine. It looked so clear through the curtain that it seemed to have a projector behind. The silhouette suddenly turned towards us, and from the door of the house I saw Brian and Edouard running towards us. The silhouette stopped and changed completely. I can assure that she had that wedding dress. That was the woman I'd seen minutes before in the hallway. Although Madeline didn't know anything more about what had happened in those days, and evidently we didn't tell her anything, she's a witness of what happened at that moment of that silhouette. Besides that, she walked all night in that room, and that night none of us could return. My mom went to pick up some things from the house, and I didn't find out until the afternoon. I asked her why she had gone without telling me anything, and she answered that she didn't need to tell me to get to her parents' house. Evidently, I couldn't answer anything. My mom had gone with my cousin Lucia, and they had been in the house all morning. "Didn't you see or hear anything strange?" I asked her. "Besides the mess you guys left, nothing." And the whole house felt very cold, and I saw what the grandparents did with the room they had been talking about. It's even scary, and in the danger of so many candles lit there, I asked her about the candles. My mom told me that Lucia had entered and lit some. She told me with something unimportant, without knowing what it meant to us, and at that moment, I sent a message to Lucia to ask her what had happened, and why the hell she hadn't told me anything. I arrived at my grandparents' house very early, at about 7 in the morning. The old ladies who lived in the neighborhood were cleaning the front of their houses, moments that they commonly took advantage of to talk. The morning breeze was still in the air. For a moment, I stood there in front of the house without daring to enter. I missed my grandmother as never before, and even looking from the opaque window of the living room that she used to sew, I could still see her figure as every time I visited her.